Happy Valentine's Day! Today is February 14th. So for the Bible in a Year Challenge, we're going to be reading Leviticus 8 through 10, Proverbs 19, and Mark 7. Leviticus 8, Ordination of the Priests. The Lord said to Moses, "Now bring Aaron and his sons along with their special clothing, the anointing oil, the bull for the sin offering, the 2 rams, and the basket of unleavened bread to the entrance of the tabernacle. Then call the entire community of Israel to meet you there." So Moses followed the Lord's instructions, and all the people assembled at the tabernacle entrance. Moses announced to them, "The Lord has commanded what I am now going to do." Then he presented Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. He clothed Aaron with the embroidered tunic and tied the sash around his waist. He dressed him in the robe of the ephod, along with the ephod itself, and attached the ephod with this decorative sash. Then Moses placed the chest piece on Aaron and put the Urim and the Thummim inside it. He placed on Aaron's head the turban with the gold medallion at its front, just as the Lord had commanded him. When Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and everything in it, thus making them holy, he sprinkled the altar 7 times, anointing it and all its utensils and the wash basin and its pedestal, making them holy. Then he poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head, thus anointing him and making him holy for his work. Next Moses presented Aaron's sons and clothed them in their embroidered tunics, their sashes, and their turbans, just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses brought in the bull for the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head, as Moses slaughtered it. Moses took some of the blood, and with his finger he put it on the 4 horns of the altar to purify it. He poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. In this way he set the altar apart as holy and made atonement for it. He took all the fat around the internal organs, the lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys and their fat, and he burned them all on the altar. The rest of the bull, including its hide, meat, and dung, was burned outside of the camp, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then Moses presented the ram to the Lord for the whole burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head as Moses slaughtered it. Then Moses took the ram's blood and sprinkled it against the sides of the altar. Next he cut the ram into pieces and burned the head, some of its pieces, and the fat on the altar. After washing the internal organs and the legs with water, Moses burned the entire ram on the altar as a whole burnt offering. It was an offering given to the Lord by fire, very pleasing to the Lord. All this was done just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Next Moses presented the second ram, which was the ram of ordination. Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head as Moses slaughtered it. Then Moses took some of its blood and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear and the thumb of his right hand and the big toe of his right foot. Next he presented Aaron's sons and put some of the blood on the lobe of their right ears, the thumb of their right hands, and the big toe of their right feet. He then sprinkled the rest of the blood against the sides of the altar. Next he took the fat, including the fat from the tail, the fat around the internal organs, the lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys with their fat, along with the right thigh. On top of these he placed a loaf of unleavened bread, a cake of unleavened bread soaked with olive oil, and a thin wafer spread with olive oil. All these were taken from the basket of bread made without yeast that was placed in the Lord's presence. He gave all of these to Aaron and his sons, and he presented the portions by lifting them up before the Lord. Moses then took all the offerings back and burned them on the altar on top of the burnt offerings as an ordination offering. It was an offering given to the Lord by fire, very pleasing to the Lord. Then Moses took the breast and lifted it up in the Lord's presence. This was Moses' share of the ram of ordination, just as the Lord had commanded him. Next Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood that was on the altar, and he sprinkled them on Aaron and his clothing, and on his sons and their clothing. In this way he made Aaron and his sons and their clothing holy. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, "Boil the rest of the meat at the tabernacle entrance, and eat it along with the bread that is in the basket of ordination offering, just as I commanded you. Any meat or bread that is left over must be burned up. Do not leave the tabernacle entrance for 7 days, for that is the time it will take to complete the ordination ceremony. What has been done today was commanded by the Lord in order to make atonement for you. Remember, you must stay at the entrance of the tabernacle day and night for 7 days, doing everything the Lord requires. If you fail in this, you will die. This is what the Lord has said." So Aaron and his sons did everything the Lord had commanded through Moses. Chapter 9, the priests begin their work. After the ordination ceremony on the 8th day, Moses called together Aaron and his sons and the leaders of Israel. He said to Aaron, "Take a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a whole burnt offering, both with no physical defects, and present them to the Lord. Then tell the Israelites to take a male goat for a sin offering for themselves, and a year-old calf and a year-old lamb for a whole burnt offering, each with no physical defects. Also tell them to take a bull and a ram for a peace offering, and flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering. Tell them to present all these offerings to the Lord, because the Lord will appear to them today." So the people brought all these things to the entrance of the tabernacle, just as Moses had commanded, and the whole community came and stood there in the Lord's presence. Then Moses told them, "When you have followed these instructions from the Lord, the glorious presence of the Lord will appear to you." Then Moses said to Aaron, approach the altar and present your sin offering and your whole burnt offering to make atonement for yourself. Then present the offerings to make atonement for the people, just as the Lord had commanded. So Aaron went to the altar and slaughtered the calf as a sin offering for himself. His sons brought him the blood, and he dipped his finger into it and put it on the horns of the altar. He poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he burned on the altar the fat, the kidneys, and the lobe of the liver from the sin offering, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The meat and the hide, however, he burned outside the camp. Next, Aaron slaughtered the animal for the whole burnt offering. His sons brought him the blood, and he sprinkled it against the sides of the altar. They handed the animal to him piece by piece, including the head, and he burned each part on the altar. Then he washed the internal organs and the legs, and also burned them on the altar as a whole burnt offering. Next, Aaron presented the sacrifices for the people. He slaughtered the people's goat and presented it as their sin offering, just as he had been done previously for himself. Then he brought the whole burnt offering and presented it in the prescribed way. He also brought the grain offering, burnt a handful of the flour on the altar, in addition to the regular morning burnt offering. Then Aaron slaughtered the bull and the ram for the people's peace offering. His sons brought him the blood, and he sprinkled it against the sides of the altar. Then he took the fat of the bull and the ram, the fat from the tail and from around the internal organs, along with the kidneys and the lobe of the liver. He placed these fat parts on top of the breasts of these animals and then burned them on the altar. Aaron then lifted up the breasts and right thighs as an offering to the Lord, just as Moses had commanded. After that, Aaron raised his hands toward the people and blessed them. Then, after presenting the sin offering, the whole burnt offering, and the peace offering, he stepped down from the altar. Next, Moses and Aaron went into the tabernacle, and when they came back out, they blessed the people again, and the glorious presence of the Lord appeared to the whole community. Fire blazed forth from the Lord's presence and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. When the people saw all this, they shouted with joy and fell face down on the ground. Chapter 10, the sin of Nadab and Abihu. Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu put coals of fire in their incense burners and sprinkled incense over it. In this way, they disobeyed the Lord by burning before him a different kind of fire than he had commanded. So fire blazed forth from the Lord's presence and burned them up, and they died there before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, this is what the Lord meant when he said, I will show myself holy among those who are near me. I will be glorified before all the people. And Aaron was silent. Then Moses called for Mishael and Elzaphan, Aaron's cousins, the sons of Aaron's uncle Uzziel. He said to them, come and carry the bodies of your relatives away from the sanctuary to a place outside the camp. So they came forward and carried them out of the camp by their tunics as Moses had commanded. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, do not mourn by letting your hair hang loose or by tearing your clothes. If you do, you will die, and the Lord will be angry with the whole community of Israel. However, the rest of the Israelites, your relatives, may mourn for Nadab and Abihu, whom the Lord has destroyed by fire. But you are not to leave the entrance of the tabernacle, under penalty of death, for the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you. So they did as Moses commanded. Instructions for priestly conduct. Then the Lord said to Aaron, you and your descendants must never drink wine or any other alcoholic drink before going into the tabernacle. If you do, you will die. This is a permanent law for you, and it must be kept by all future generations. You are to distinguish between what is holy and what is ordinary, what is ceremonially unclean and what is clean. And you must teach the Israelites all the laws that the Lord has given through Moses. Then Moses said to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, take what is left of the grain offering after the handful has been presented to the Lord by fire. Make sure there is no yeast in it, and eat it beside the altar, for it is most holy. It must be eaten in a sacred place, for it has been given to you and your descendants as your regular share of the offering given to the Lord by fire. These are the commands I have been given. But the breast and thigh that were lifted up may be eaten in any place that is ceremonially clean. These parts have been given to you and to your sons and daughters as your regular share of the peace offering presented by the people of Israel. The thigh and breast that are lifted up must be lifted up to the Lord, along with the fat of the offerings given by fire. Then they will belong to you and your descendants forever, just as the Lord had commanded. When Moses demanded to know what had happened to the goat of the sin offering, he discovered that it had been burned up. As a result, he became very angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons. Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? He demanded. It is a holy offering. It was given to you for removing the guilt of the community and for making atonement for the people before the Lord. Since the animal's blood was not taken into the holy place, you should have eaten the meat in the sanctuary area as I ordered you. Then Aaron answered Moses on behalf of his sons. Today my sons presented both their sin offering and their burnt offering to the Lord, he said. This kind of thing has also happened to me. Would the Lord have approved if I had eaten the sin offering today? And when Moses heard this, he approved. Proverbs 19. It is better to be poor and honest than to be a fool and dishonest. Zeal without knowledge is not good. A person who moves too quickly may go the wrong way. People ruin their lives by their own foolishness and then are angry at the Lord. Wealth makes many friends, quote-unquote friends. Poverty drives them away. A false witness will not go unpunished, nor will a liar escape. Many beg favors from a prince. Everyone is the friend of a person who gives gifts. If the relatives of the poor despise them, how much more will their friends avoid them? The poor call after them, but they are gone. To acquire wisdom is to love oneself. People who cherish understanding will prosper. A false witness will not go unpunished, and a liar will be destroyed. It isn't right for a fool to live in luxury, or for a slave to rule over princes. People with good sense restrain their anger. They earn esteem by overlooking wrongs. The king's anger is like a lion's roar, but his favor is like dew on the grass. A foolish child is a calamity to a father. A nagging wife annoys like a constant dripping. Parents can provide their sons with an inheritance of houses and wealth, but only the Lord can give an understanding wife. A lazy person sleeps soundly and goes hungry. Keep the commands and keep your life. Despising them leads to death. If you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, and he will repay you. Discipline your children while there is hope. If you don't, you will ruin their lives. Short-tempered people must pay their own penalty. If you rescue them once, you will have to do it again. Get all the advice and instruction you can, and be wise the rest of your life. You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. Loyalty makes a person attractive, and it is better to be poor than dishonest. Fear of the Lord gives life, security, and protection from harm. Some people are so lazy that they won't even lift a finger to feed themselves. If you punish a mocker, the simple-minded will learn a lesson. If you reprove the wise, they will be all the wiser. Children who mistreat their father or chase away their mother are a public disgrace and an embarrassment. If you stop listening to instruction, my child, you have turned your back on knowledge. A corrupt witness makes a mockery of justice. The mouth of the wicked gulps down evil. Mockers will be punished, and the backs of fools will be beaten. Mark 7. Jesus teaches about inner purity. One day, some Pharisees and teachers of religious law arrived from Jerusalem to confront Jesus. They noticed that some of Jesus' disciples failed to follow the usual Jewish ritual of hand washing before eating. The Jews, especially the Pharisees, do not eat until they have poured water over their cupped hands, as required by their ancient traditions. Similarly, they eat nothing bought from the market unless they have immersed their hands in water. This is but one of many traditions they have clung to, such as their ceremony of washing cups, pitchers, and kettles. So the Pharisees and teachers of religious law asked him, "Why don't your disciples follow our age-old customs? For they eat without first performing the hand-washing ceremony." Jesus replied, "You hypocrites! Isaiah was prophesying about you when he said, 'These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far away. Their worship is a farce, for they replace God's commands with their own man-made teachings. For you ignore God's specific laws and substitute your own traditions.'" Then he said, "You reject God's laws in order to hold on to your own traditions. For instance, Moses gave you this law from God: honor your mother and father, and anyone who speaks evil of father or mother must be put to death. But you say it is all right for people to say to their parents, 'Sorry, I can't help you, for I have vowed to give to God what I could have given to you.' You let them disregard their needy parents. As such, you break the law of God in order to protect your own tradition. And this is only one example. There are many, many others." Then Jesus called to the crowd to come and hear. "All of you listen," he said, "and try to understand. You are not defiled by what you eat. You are defiled by what you say and do. Then Jesus went to a house to get away from the crowds, and his disciples asked him what he meant by the statement he had made. Don't you understand either? He asked. Can't you see that what you eat won't defile you? Food doesn't come in contact with your heart, but only passes through the stomach and then comes out again. By saying this, he showed that every kind of food is acceptable. And then he added, it is the thought life that defiles you. For from within, out of a person's heart, comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, eagerness for lustful pleasure, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these vile things come from within you. They are what defile you and make you unacceptable to God. The faith of a Gentile woman. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre. He tried to keep it secret that he was there, but he couldn't. As usual, the news of his arrival spread fast. Right away, a woman came to see him whose little girl was possessed by an evil spirit. She had heard about Jesus, and now she came and fell at his feet. She begged him to release her child from the demon's control. Since she was a Gentile, born in Syria, Phoenicia, Jesus told her, first, I should help my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs. She replied, that's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are given some crumbs from the children's plates. Good answer, he said, and because you have answered so well, I have healed your daughter. And when she arrived home, her little girl was lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. Jesus heals a deaf and mute man. Jesus left Tyre and went to Sidon, then back to the Sea of Galilee in the region of the 10 towns. A deaf man with a speech impediment was brought to him, and the people begged Jesus to lay his hands on the man to heal him. Jesus led him to a private place away from the crowd. He put his fingers into the man's ears. Then spitting onto his own fingers, he touched the man's tongue with the spittle. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and commanded, be opened! As instantly the man could hear perfectly and speak plainly. Jesus told the crowd not to tell everyone, but the more he told them not to, the more they spread the news. For they were completely amazed. Again and again they said, everything he does is wonderful. He even heals those who are deaf and mute.